Many gunfights don't happen at 10 meters. If you're lucky, they happen at 10 centimeters. If someone grabs your gun or grabs you, can you actually stay alive? Today, we're doing a deep dive into the one skill that most shooters never train: real weapon retention and close quarters fighting. Here we go. Welcome to part 2 of this series where we talk about weapon retention and close quarter fighting. James, many people imagine they'll simply just pull the trigger if attacked. What actually happens to things like accuracy and awareness and physical control when it comes to, let's call it, body-on-body distance?
Okay, well, so yeah, it's interesting, right? I think there's a couple of things there in that what happens to accuracy, well, kind of, you're taking unsighted shots essentially. So you better know where your muzzle is pointing. In other words, it needs to be pointing at the threat. So assuming that you've drawn the firearm and now you're in that physical situation, you better know where it's pointing. But also you better know where your body is in comparison to that muzzle, right? If your firearm is here and all of a sudden you're fending and you're pushing someone away and you decide to take a shot at that point in time, where you could be busy shooting yourself and them at the same time. And I think it's really important to take into account that let's say you do take a shot. What do people normally do immediately after they've been shot? What do people normally do?
Probably start bleeding.
So I've been fortunate enough to train and share with, and I'm going to use the term thousands of people because it probably is thousands of people that have been shot or have shot someone else. Mm-hmm. And I can tell you right now, 99.9% of people have told me that number one, they didn't know that they were shot. Mm-hmm. And number two, they just carried. If they did know that they were shot, or that the other person knew that they'd been shot, generally what happened is they disconnected and started running. But if they didn't know they'd been shot, they just carried on doing whatever they were doing before they were shot. So if you're in that entanglement and you let your round goes off, then number one, you might not know that you've been shot. But number two, the person who's fighting you might not know they've been shot. It might be too close for them to see any blood come out or whatever. And there's a period of time, even if you've shot them, somewhere potentially lethal, there's a period of time before they're going to start suffering any reduction in their capabilities. So that fight is still on. So taking shots that, and I'm going to refer back to Craig Douglas again, taking shots that are going to mechanically change their ability to fight you is probably more important than taking shots that are going to have an end effect, right? So what I mean by that is that Craig Douglas talks about getting shots into the pelvis area, because there's a mechanical thing. If you destroy the pelvis, it's like destroying the back axle of a car, old school cars, right? You and I, where they had a back axle. If you break the back axle, your car stops moving because it just can't any longer. So if we can break the back axle, if we can break the pelvis area, then you've immediately taken away the mobility and the ability of someone to be able to fight you. If you put a shot into their stomach or their chest or whatever, there's probably 30 seconds that you could also end up dying where they're still able to function, and maybe even more than that. So knowing where your shot, practicing and knowing where your shots, where your muzzle is pointing, practicing and knowing how to get that angle towards the pelvis so that you can mechanically stop them from doing what they're doing, and making sure that your body parts aren't in the way. And I think that being able to do all that during an event that you haven't trained for, it's very challenging.
That makes sense. And that can be another serious shock to your system if you squeeze off a shot or two or three and you hit that attacker. But he's still in the fight. I think that you need to...
imagine how demoralizing. Imagine how demoralizing that would be, right? You take a couple of shots, they hit, but this guy feels stronger than he did before you took those shots. Now your self-doubt is going to escalate at an exponential rate. So yeah, I can't. In fact, I'd rather not imagine that situation. Sorry about the dogs barking in the background. They should stop.
No, that's that's what dogs tend to do. What are the core techniques or principles of retention shooting, and how do they differ from your more traditional marksmanship?
Core principles. So the first thing is that I think, and the first time I started, doing retention shooting was the uncomfortable feeling of taking a shot when the muzzle is still close to your body. Like the first time, and I was fully supervised when I was doing it, but the first time I did that, it was extraordinarily uncomfortable. We use what we call a pectoral index, right? So the gun is very high on the pectoral face, pointing diagonally downwards. But just taking that shot when that muzzle is very close to your body is something that you kind of got to do and get over and get past. So that's one thing. And then I think going back to what I said before, keeping the understanding that your maximum retention is when the firearm is close to your body and in between your hips and your shoulders. So, or being able to learn to orientate the firearm in the right direction within that environment. And a good example would be that because our body is so well connected together. If I've got my mid chest, my high ready index, right, with my firearm, if I let my shoulders drop, what happens is the muzzle goes upwards. Okay, so let's say I've drawn my firearm, I've got to my high ready position, and there's someone 3 meters from me closing on me, and I decide that I need to take a shot from this point. Now, if I haven't trained to keep my shoulders shrugged at that point in time, my shots are actually going to be going up over the person's head. So just even in the draw stroke, understanding that I'm drawing to a kind of shoulder shrug, muzzle forward position, and then pushing the gun out from there. And I might need, and again, it's something that I think that everyone should train. We go to the range and we stand 3 meters from the target or 2 meters from the target or whatever. And we draw to a high ready position and take a shot into that, and see where it lands, and then adjust your shoulders accordingly so that you start getting those shots into that center mass position, and then take a step back, and we call it extending the firearm appropriate for the appropriate distance of the threat or the target, right? So being able to know that if I draw my firearm and I push it out and the person is 2 meters from me, 1 meter from me, then I'm giving them the firearm. I'm just handing it to them. Okay.
Yes.
So how far should I extend the firearm appropriate to the distance of the threat? So being able to understand that if the threat is 1 meter from me, then I should be taking my shots from here. And as I move back, or as the space is created through either me moving back or my threat moving away from me, then appropriately extending the firearm and then achieving my sight picture, sight alignment, whatever. But I think just incorporating that, just even that one drill into your training every time you go to the range will make a huge difference to your ability to fight between that 0 to or 1 meter to 5 meter kind of distance. So we could categorize, we could break it down, and when we're teaching, we break it down into gun retention, gun assailant's gun on your firearm, and assailant's gun not on your firearm. So gun retention is still the attacker doesn't need to have grabbed my gun for me to be concerned about gun retention. He just needs to be close enough to grab it, if that makes sense.
That the threat is there.
Right. So 1 meter from me, he might not have grabbed it yet, but I believe my life is in danger, therefore it's time to take shots. So I need to understand at that point in time, how far do I push my firearm out and when do I start shooting? And then there's assailant has grabbed the gun, and that's when we're in that entangled situation. I think both of those things need to be trained separately and together.
That sort of joins up with the next question that I wanted to ask about how civilians should think about target selection and angles, and specifically safety when firing in such extreme proximities to a threat.
Yeah, so it comes down to, I guess, all of the sort of fundamental rules of firearms. But yeah, I think we just under arms just over arms grabbing distance, keep a stable base, and interestingly, and it's very important to also train that when you're moving away from your threat, you shouldn't be moving backwards. And now I'm not going to say never move backwards, because there's times where you might have to move backwards.
Sure.
But generally, a side step is a much better option than a backward step. Because when we move backwards as human beings, what happens is we tend to, unless you've trained it otherwise, we tend to move our shoulders backwards from our heels, and therefore the next thing that we do is fall over. So unless you've trained moving backwards with your nose over your toes and stepping back in the right way. But if we take a side step, number one, what we do is we orientate ourselves off of the attack line. And number two, we're moving in a much more stable base. So I think practicing moving from one side to the other, but in a circular motion, not just a side step. It would be a circular kind of motion, and taking those shots as we move, and understanding that they're unsighted shots, and understanding how far away from the target we can still actually hit the target without needing our sight picture, sight alignment, and so on and so on. And then being able to also, as I said earlier, being able to take the shots from a fully retention position at 0 and still be able to orientate the gun in a safe direction for you, and be able to take shots that are going to mechanically incapacitate your opponent. So those things need to be trained separately, I think.
Okay. Physical fitness, things like strength and mobility, grip power, what role does these things play in surviving such a close quarter entangled fight?
I really wanted to do that whole thing. What is that thing on YouTube? Starting on November the 1st, where military training, whatever, what is it that they do on those adverts?
Yeah, I know which one.
Drives me insane. Anyway, and the other one is Tai Chi, right? No, you should do Tai Chi. So I think the best way that I can say is that, to quote another person, I think that no one has ever had a fight, even Dricus du Plessis, no one's ever had a fight and said, I was too fit for that. Right? No one walked away from a fight going, I was too fit for that. It was too easy. Okay. So I think that we need to take our fitness very seriously, by being fitter, being stronger, being more functionally capable. We will definitely fare better in a fight, in a physical fight, than if we are not fit, strong, capable, and all those kind of things. So I think it's underestimated a lot of the time. I think that people don't normally take care of their fitness enough to be able to, and am I saying that someone who's not fit and strong is going to not win the fight? No, I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying that it will be better. You'll fare better by being fitter and stronger. Now, what kind of fitness and strength? I'm super into functional fitness, sort of calisthenic type stuff. MMA type fitness is great, but if you're a dude who wants to go to the gym, then go to the gym. Just do something and be fitter and stronger, so that if you do end up in that fight situation, you're not overwhelmed by the feeling of someone who, because someone can be, because we've got adrenaline pumping and we've got self-doubt going on in our mind and all of those kind of things happening, even someone who's not as strong as you can feel stronger, and if it starts psychologically affecting you very, very quickly. So just be fitter and stronger, so that if you end up with that physical situation and they grab hold of you, you can go, okay, cool, I know that I can deal with this, rather than feeling overwhelmed and helpless at that point in time.
Okay. Let's talk draw strokes, because most people, as we've discussed, train draw strokes from open space where there's nothing in your way, there's nothing tangling you, keeping your arms pinned to your side. How do you adapt your draw strokes when you are pinned or grabbed, maybe, or driven against a car door, for instance?
So number one, I think the first part is to be able to understand timing of draw stroke. So what I mean by that is that um, if you really, someone has really taken that initiative away from you and they've pushed you against a car door or a wall or pushed you over or something of that sort, now is not the time to be drawing your firearm. Effectively, by drawing your firearm, what you're doing is you're introducing lethality into the fight that wasn't there 2 seconds ago, assuming that the assailant didn't know that you were concealing properly and so on. But essentially, what you've just done by drawing your firearm, you've made it lethal for the person who's attacking you, which it might not have been at that prior, a moment before that. Number two, what you've done is you've completely incapacitated one of your hands with regards to being able to protect your head, protect yourself from punches that are being thrown, from people grabbing you, from the person grabbing you, and that kind of thing. So I think understanding timing of draw stroke is really, really important. When is the right time to do it and when is not the right time to do it? And then being able to draw the firearm to, and I'm going to use the term again, and it means I'm using the term so that people can go onto YouTube and Google, and I'm going to throw it out there. Google ShivWorks on YouTube and thumb pectoral index, and you'll see Craig teaching the thumb pectoral index, and it's really the only safe, consistent place that you can draw a firearm to under retention and know that where that muzzle is pointing at that point in time, at that moment. So I think no timing, and understand timing and practice and drill timing with your partners, when to do it, when to draw the firearm and when not to draw the firearm or the knife, whatever, and figure out and work on that thumb pectoral index. And that thumb pectoral index happens on a normal draw stroke and on the retention, so you can build that into your normal daily draw stroke as a part of your draw stroke. It's nothing that big a deal to incorporate.
Okay. Well, I think we've covered my next question. Are there specific drills or training methods? And I think this one covers quite a bit of that. Where you can practice or build real retention skills. So when you are in a real confrontation with real stress and real danger, and we've covered this in part already, but I want to end with this because it's so important, I feel. Should a defender not go for the gun, instead fight empty-handed first to protect the firearm and avoid a catastrophic, I just stumbled over that one, a catastrophic disarm? What would you say would be a more natural sequence to go from fighting with your bare hands or whatever you can lay your hands on in the moment to create the space? And if it still carries on where you have to decide, this is deadly, I need to introduce lethal force to this if I want to walk away. How do you get to that point? How can you train for that? How can you get yourself more prepared here and your body for a situation like that?
So I think what you're saying is, okay, so I think that I'm going to go back to, I agree 100% that you should fight, and it kind of goes back to that draw stroke thing, right? When do we draw? And you ideally you would draw when you are under less pressure, which means you're drawing when you have created space. Okay, so you need to be able to fight to create space, and then once you've created space, then you're under less pressure. You're less likely to fumble your draw stroke. You're more likely to be able to do all the right things. Okay. Now there might be some situations, and we've talked about, where you've gone for your firearm, or the other person has seen your firearm and they've gone for your firearm, and you have to draw at that point in time, and therefore you've got to take shots within that entanglement, and that's where we go back to that thumb pectoral index and all that side of things. But I think overall you should be training to create space before drawing the firearm or before drawing your weapon. What training should we do to do that? I guess it comes down to do some boxing, do some mixed martial arts or wrestling, and you're pretty good to go. I think if you can throw a couple of good strikes, if you can, first of all, you need to be able to protect your head. And I think the most universal way of protecting your head, some people call it this. We call it the fend. Tony Blauer calls it a 3-point. No, Rodney King calls it 3-point cover. Tony Blauer calls it something else. But and Craig Douglas has his version. It's basically a one default response to being able to protect your head. So train that first of all. Don't get knocked out. Don't get knocked over.
That helps. Yes.
All right. So have a good stable base. And then be able to throw one or two relatively effective strikes in order to be able to create space. And when I say relatively effective, I don't mean being able to knock someone out. You know, the chances of you knocking someone out, or someone like, you know, I'm smaller person, being able to knock a big guy like you or your brother out is highly unlikely. And even in, you know, in any fight situation, knocking someone out in the street, it's not that often that someone does that. But I don't need to knock anyone out. All I need to do is interrupt you enough to be able to create space, to be able to draw my firearm or my weapon under less stress. So have a good default response to a strike towards your head. Have a good ability to stay standing, a good solid base, to be able to move forward and backwards and in any direction at the same time, and be able to throw one or two relatively effective strikes in order to create space to draw your firearm. I think if you can connect those things together, and there's plenty of you know, resources out there these days to be able to do that, and if you can just get those three things and train them enough, or train them lots, and train them under stress, you're going to be fine. It's not a case of investing 8 years into boxing or Muay Thai or whatever. Just be able to do those three things effectively.
Okay. Right. Well, I'm going to end it there. That is the end of part 2 of this 2-part series. Again, if you carry a gun, but you never train for the moment someone else is close enough to touch you, you are probably preparing for the wrong fight. Share this episode with someone who carries, because you might just save their lives. As always, if you like the video, click the like button. Please click on the subscribe button. Help us grow the channel. And as always, smash that bell icon so that you can get notifications of all our new videos coming out. James, that is it from me. I am so grateful for the time that you put into this, for talking to me. Thank you so much for sharing your skills and wisdom with us.